At times you really do have to make use of what tools you got. Get there eventually. Hello there, it's Paul here and welcome along everyone. Yeah, it did take a little while to cut through that, get rid of that piece, but my bandsaw is not big enough to, even on the narrowest part of this, to get this through and cut. So it really was a case of having to use what tools you got available to do it, and it didn't take too long. Actually, it only took about 5-10 minutes. And I've got to say, those saws are really, really good for this sort of thing. This is a continuation from the last couple of videos where I bought all that wood from the local mill. This was that really big block where the pith is on the top here. And I will talk about that in just a sec, because as you can see here, that there's the pith and we can pull that apart a bit. The crack runs across there. And it does come across the top here and down the side here, so there is that chunk there. So what I'm going to do in actual fact is, when I turn this down, I'm going to turn it as a bowl. So if we look at this as sort of like the end profile, you can probably see the crack better this side going across the top there. I'm actually going to the bowl so that it's probably 2/3 of the way up the top here and come around. So it's just more of a, I suppose, a bit like a pudding basin, but as we all know, plans change as you go along and all that may go out the window. So my first thing of all, what I'm going to do is use my large bowl gouge just to start from the bottom here, taking at the corner and truing up the overall shape. Now this is extremely wet wood, and even now when you spin it up on the lathe, there is water coming out of the thing, and you can probably see on this end it is totally saturated. It is literally as if somebody poured water over the end here, and that is registering 28-29% moisture on there. So it is extremely high. I don't want to rough turn this and leave it. The plan at the moment is I will finish turn it as an overall piece, and if it distorts, if it cracks, then so be it. That's what the wood's going to want to do. And the way I've mounted this on my faceplate, so it's held in the chuck on the faceplate, and I've just brought up the tailstock with the live centre just to give it a little bit of extra support. I will get this trued up first of all, working from the bottom here, and get either a tenon or a mortise on the bottom. Now I've got the basic shape I think I'm going to go for. So it's almost a bit like a pudding bowl shape, but I'm going to do like a little lip on here, and we can see where the pith is there. So I'm going to probably just take it off as a fairly thin lip, maybe 5mm thick, something like that. But that will obviously happen when I turn this around in the chuck. Now I've still got a few tool marks on there, but I've just been sanding this to see what it comes up like, and it's just took it up to 180 on here. So I've put a mortise in the bottom there. Now it's getting late in the day, so I'm going to leave this on the lathe as it is now. So it's probably going to distort a bit overnight, but then I shall just come back out tomorrow and just sort that out. So I've just come out to the shed this morning and I left this overnight. I mean, the outside of this feels a lot drier, but it is still about 20% on the moisture content. And I've just sharpened up my large bowl gouge again. And I've really found that it does take a lot out of the sharpness doing this. I mean, I've had to sharpen this now about 3 times doing this one, just doing the outside here. So I'm just going to try and take one more pass over the outside here. That's come up a lot better now, and you can see the colour change in this. That's where the wet wood is, and as it dries out on the surface, it's obviously come back to this lighter colour. So there's a lot of moisture in there still. So I'm going to just give this a rough sand up and then see about getting this switched around on the chuck. Now I've just reversed this around in the chuck and took the faceplate off. It's certainly moved a little bit because this is not running fully true anyway. And just to give an example here, I want to see what it come up like. This bottom half I've sanded right the way up through the grits to 600, and oak has really got a coarse grain anyway, and you can still feel the slight ridges of the grain through there, but there's still that really smoothness about it. The next thing to do is to hollow out the inside, and I'm going to take this down certainly to get rid of this pith and the crack here. Now I've finished this to the shape I'm going to take it to. The walls at the top here probably about 10mm thick. As I get down here they start getting a bit wider until they curve towards the bottom. Now it's interesting actually the way this is working, because this is working very much a bit like your washing machine does. It's with the lathe spinning at about 1000 RPM, the water is slowly being pulled by the G-forces to the outside of the bowl, which is why we get these wet patches on the outside here, and that's where the end grain is. So I need to just sand up the inside and probably resand over the top here. And it's interesting actually, because on the very bottom on the inside there I've got a moisture reading of just under 23%, so it is still fairly wet, and I don't know how much this is going to distort as it dries, but I can't, because there's so much moisture in here, I can't really put any finish on it yet. So the main thing is really just to get this sanded off first of all, and then hope it doesn't distort too much. But the main thing will be just to probably just make sure that the bottom is flat when it has fully dried. Now I've sanded this to 320 inside and out, and last time I took a meter reading it was still showing at about 20%, and after taking it off the chuck I have noticed there is a very, very small crack starting to appear there on the inside, and that's just on that edge bit there. It's not coming through or anything like that. Well, what I'm going to do before, because I can't really put much of a finish on this because it's got so much moisture in it, I'm going to leave this in the shed maybe for a few days or maybe a week or two, just to let that moisture content go down. Now it's been a week since I turned this, and it has nicely distorted. I actually had it even sat on my radiator for several days during that week, which has really dried this out. On the outside here, the highest moisture reading I can get is about 7%. Now I've put this into my Longworth chuck and it's in there nice and secure. I've actually just wedged out one side here because the top is totally distorted, which you'll see when I take this off, and the roundness as well, it's totally lost its roundness, so it's bulged one way and sort of shrunk the other way, and hopefully you can see with that spinning what it's like. Now because of that as well, it's also misshaped the bottom, so it doesn't sit flat on the bottom. I just want to take the bottom down. I'll just see how it goes as I go. I might just level it off, or I might take it down so that the whole bottom goes in. I'm going to run my lathe probably at the slower speed, which is only about 500 RPM, just to slowly nibble away on the bottom here. So the lathe is running at its slowest, and hopefully you can see that it's seriously out of balance there. Which is why I'm going to take it really slow and easy on here. That's fine, so I'm just going to sand that off. And the important thing as well is that because we've actually gone back into the wood a fair bit, I'll be able to get a better reading of the moisture content here. And there we go, we're getting about 10, just about 11% where I've gone down where the original wall was for the mortise. Now I've sanded this all up. What I've also done as well, signed it, dated it, and put the wood on there as well. And I've hand sanded all this all the way up to 600 grit again, so it's nice and smooth. Now hopefully you can see on there on one of the cameras how this is distorted on the top. First of all, you can probably notice that it's a very oval shape now. So with the it's actually extended along the grain, and where the grain goes outwise, it's either shrunk or stayed the same. This half of the bowl is actually higher than this half, and that's obviously why I had to wedge it out on the Longworth chuck. Now finish wise, I've decided I'm going to go for Danish oil, so I'm going to give this initially a coat. It may well have 2 or 3 coats by the time I've finished. Hopefully you'll see on this as well, when we apply the Danish oil, it just really brings out the grain again. So I shall just build that up with, as I say, 2 or 3 coats before that's finished. Now I only bought this bit of wood, what was it, 8 days ago, so it was Saturday last week, it's Sunday now, and as you see from the video, it was extremely wet when I first started turning it. So when I came back in yesterday, which was Saturday, so it was a week after I'd originally turned it, I then had a dried piece, and the highest moisture content I could get on this, even when I turned away the mortise on the bottom there, I could only pick up about 11% moisture. To me, that is now extremely dry. I gave this yesterday a couple of coats of Danish oil, and today all I've done is I've just given this a gentle buff up with a paper towel. Now I'm not a lover of the shape. I think my biggest problem is that I'll pick up a piece of wood and I'm trying to get the maximum out of that piece of wood as I possibly can. It doesn't really matter whether you like the shape or not. The whole point of this video was to show you that I could take a wet piece of wood that I literally bought on one day, turned it to a finished shape on that same day, and then left it literally a week in the shed, came out and just finished it off. So hopefully this has given you a good idea of what you can do with that freshly turned wet stroke green wood. Thanks a lot for watching.